Good afternoon. It's great to be here with you. In 2005, we had a rapidly growing manufacturing company in a small town in Kansas called Hutchinson, Kansas. And it was just growing rapidly and we couldn't hire people. So I heard about a work release program at the local prison. We happen to have a state prison in Kansas there in Hutchinson. So I went to the warden, and the warden said, yeah, we've got guys we can ship to you, and you work them during the day, and then we'll bring them back to prison at night. So I said, I need 10 of those guys. So he gave me 10. I worked them for 30, 60 days, and it turned out great. I went back to the warden. I said, I could use another 10 of those guys. And he said, well, I don't have 10, but I'm getting ready to vacate about 20,000 square feet inside this maximum security prison. If you can figure out how to move your business inside the prison, I've got 400 guys ready to work. And I said to myself, I think this is perfect. These guys are criminals. I can get them in there and I will work them like they have never been worked. I will make them pay for their sins. Second thing, as I said, this is really good because they'll show up on time every day. And lastly, they'll come in the right uniform. But you know, in 30 days, we had moved inside a maximum security prison. And I will tell you, in about another 30 days, God had really changed my heart towards what those men were. I'd never been in a maximum security prison before. But when I got in there, I felt like maybe the only difference between them and me is that they got caught. Now, I'm being a bit facetious. But these men oftentimes made a stupid decision in a couple of minutes, and they were in jail for a long time, going to be in prison for a long time. So anyway, I got this idea that we needed to, God really convicted me, that we needed to serve these men better. I went in there out of greed. I went in there because I needed labor. I didn't go in there to change these men. But when I got in there and I figured when I saw the need that was there, I needed to do something. So I got this vision. Once a month, we have a leadership lunch, and we get all our employees together, so we started doing the same thing for the prison, and we started with about 20 men in prison. I remember probably 3 or 4 leadership lunches in, 3 or 4 months in, I got this idea that we needed to have a big vision for these guys to get a hold of. So I remember standing up in front of them at this leadership lunch, and I said, guys, here's my vision for you all. I said, I want to have the best prison in the United States of America. They slapped their legs. They started laughing at me. They said, don't you know that's an oxymoron, best prison. And then I said, let me tell you what my promise to you is. My promise to you is I'm going to help you become the best person you can become. And if you're the best person you can become, we will have the best prison in the United States. Out of about 20 men, I had 4 or 5 men buy into that. And kind of the rest is history. What I'd like to do today is answer 2 questions. What is, some of you are very familiar with this, but some of you are not. But what is, the first question I want to answer is, what is a BAM business? What does a business's mission business look like in a very kind of succinct way? The second question I want to answer is, if you are running a BAM business, what's your responsibility as a BAM leader? What should you be doing? There are some cards on the table here, on your table. Unfortunately, we have a bigger turnout than I thought, and so we're a little short on those cards. We've got some extras up here on these blank tables, but I'm going to be talking off this card, so maybe you can share with your neighbor or whatever we can do there. But what I'd like you to do is go to the side of that card that says transformation on it, and you'll see it says business, okay? Here is what I think the world is calling us to, and it's on the left-hand side there. You'll see dollar signs. You see the dollars calling us. Well, actually, Milton Friedman, a renowned economist that won the Nobel Prize, said, the purpose of business is to maximize shareholder value. And for a publicly held business, that's probably not a bad idea, okay? But I think for a privately held company, we can do much better than that. So what we believe the purpose of business is to create economic, social, and spiritual capital. Now, some BAM people will add a 4th one to that. They call it creation care, as you've heard in the last few days. We take that environmental piece and we put it in with the relational piece of social capital. So we talk about economic, social, and spiritual capital. That comes out of Genesis 2:15. In verse 15, it says, I put man in the garden to work, and if you're going to work, you're going to have the first thing you need to flourish, and that's material provision, food, clothing, shelter. The second thing you need in verse 18 says it's not good for man to be alone. You need deep, authentic relationships. We call that social capital. And in the third thing in verse 16, 17 says, hey, by the way, don't eat the fruit of that tree over there. It's the first time God gave man a moral code to live by. This was after creation, but before the fall when man was flourishing. So in a very simple terms, you need a good job, you need friends, and you need Jesus. What else do you need to flourish? And I think that is a BAM business, if we put that all together. Let me talk about economic, social, and spiritual capital in prison. A prison is a terrible place. I did not understand the deprivation and the desolation in a maximum security prison. Most of these men are in a 5-foot by 9-foot cell, and they spend 12 hours a day there. If you're in segregation, you're going to spend 23 hours in that cell and 1 hour in a cage outside. The food's not very good. There are no relationships. The minute you enter that prison as a newbie, the gangs are immediately soliciting you because that's your only form of protection. There are no good jobs. There are no good relationships, and most of those men don't have a purpose for living. So what does economic, social, and spiritual capital look like? And this is basically what we've done for the inmates. If you're an inmate in the state of Kansas, you'll make $1 a day. So when we moved into the prison, what we do is we pay fair market value wages. Our current average rate in prison is about $16 an hour. We have some men making $25 an hour. It is a big thing to earn a wage. I never understood. I'm a Kansas farm kid. I thought everybody worked. Yeah, I started working when I was young. But these men, and most of them have never had a job. I would say a fourth of them can't read a tape measure when they get to us. It's a sad situation. So what we do is we pay them well, we have really high expectations, and we train them. We train them as many ways as we can. We have men doing computer-aided design work now for us. We have an engineering department that we've actually moved inside the prison. Those men are leaving the prison making $60,000, $80,000 a year. It's incredible. Socially, I think the best thing we do socially for them is we simply live by this rule. We love them like we love ourselves. When I walk into the prison, I will literally start on one side and I will walk the floor. And we now have, we employ about 225 men in 2 different prisons. We have about 100 men in a maximum security prison. We have about 125 in a medium security prison. They build industrial seating in one and they build electrical assemblies in the other. But I will walk the floor. If I miss one of those men, he'll go over to the manager and say, is Pete mad at me because he didn't talk to me today? Folks, we totally underestimate the power of social capital. We totally underestimate the power of relationships. And I'm telling you, that is so, so important. Spiritually, what do we do? Well, of course, we have lots of Bible studies and that kinds of things. But a couple of things we've done that have been really powerful is we had a bunch of men who had really started growing in Christ and they wanted to get a seminary degree. So 10 years ago, we started a seminary in prison. We've had 80 men graduate from a 3-year seminary. I will tell you, they have changed the way that prison works because they are now going back in behind the walls and they are the life in that prison. The state of Kansas has stripped out all the mental health people in the prison, so there's no professional mental health help. And 43% of the men in that prison have mental health problems. So guess who's serving their fellow man? The men that have gone through the seminary program. We built a church inside of the prison. There was no place to worship, and so this is a 130-year-old prison. So it built around a kind of a rotunda thing where you have a big rotunda in the middle and the cell blocks go off the side. And the warden came to me 10 years ago and said, Pete, would you help me build a church on this? The state will give us a second floor of this rotunda. It was about 8,000 or 9,000 square feet. And he says, I think we can do this for $400,000 and it'll take us a couple of years and we'll use inmate labor, et cetera. 9 years later and $1.2 million, we got a church. Let me tell you what I think a key to creating a BAM business is, and that is if you're going to create economic, social, and spiritual capital, you have to take risk. Let's go to Matthew 26, parable of talents. You're all familiar with that. The story goes, the servant was going on a long trip, and he called the guys in, and he gave one 5, and he gave one 2, and he gave one 1. The guys that got the stewards that got the 5 and the 2, what does it say they did? It said they took it and immediately put it to work. If you're going to take something and immediately put it to work, you're going to take risk with that, okay? And I think we need to take risk if we're going to have a BAM company. So let's look at the 3 forms of capital: economic, social, and spiritual capital. How do we take risk with each one of those? What's the currency of economic capital? It's greenbacks. It's money. It's money in the bank. We need to take risk with our money. What's the currency of relational capital? It's time. How much time are you risking and investing in people? And the last one is spiritual capital. What's the currency of spiritual capital? I think it's for your faith, okay? Are you willing to stand up in front of people and risk your faith? And I think if we're really going to have an impact, we're going to risk our money, we're going to risk our time, and we're going to risk our faith. And I think that's really the only thing that happens. Let me tell you, when you do that, let me tell you the results that we've seen. We've been in the prison since 2005, so we've been there 20 years. We just ran some 10-year numbers. Over the last 10 years, we paid $36 million in wages to the inmates. They've paid, the government, the state of Kansas takes 25% of that off the top for room and board, so $9 million went back to the state of Kansas for room and board. About $1.5 million has been paid in restitution or child support or those kinds of things. We have a matching program with our inmates, and they've given about $250,000 away in the last 10 years. The stories that I can tell you, if we had hours, I could just tell you story after story. I was in the prison about a month ago, and I'll invite all of you now, if you want to come to prison, if you want to come to Wichita and take a tour in the prison, spend a couple hours with us and talk about business, we'd love to have you. But I was taking a tour through about a month ago, and we went up to the new church that we helped build. And in that church, there were 2 men leading a group of young men, young inmates that were relatively new to the prison. And here is the background of the 2 inmates that were standing in front of these men, teaching them about Jesus and how to live and talking about economic, social, and spiritual capital. One was the leader of the MS-13 gang. One was the leader of the black gang 10 years ago. These guys, for 2 or 3 years in this prison, tried to kill each other, literally. One of them heard about what we were doing and cleaned up enough to get a job for us. He was the leader of the MS-13 gang. He came to work for us within about 6 months, came to Christ, got really turned on, went through our seminary program, got convicted that he needed to love his black brother that was in the opposing gang. Every time he'd see him in the chow hall or whatever, he would walk over, hug the guy, and say, "I love you," and walk off. And about a month later, the leader of the black gang came to him and said, what's going on here? And that guy led him to Christ. That guy ultimately came to work for us, went through the seminary program, and about 6 months ago, both those guys, who were probably making $45,000 to $50,000 a year with us, left our employ to go work for free and minister to their brothers. So you can see, yeah, praise the Lord. Recidivism nationally is 70%, 70%. Our last 10 years, it's been 7%. Take those numbers times 30,000 bucks, folks. Our profits, our business is 3 times as profitable as the average company in our industry, okay? And it's because we've created this culture. It's because we share the wealth. We take some risk with our economic capital. We give that back to the folks, and it becomes a really, really powerful thing. That's what a triple bottom line company is: economic, social, and spiritual capital. Let's kick on over here to personal. What is my responsibility as a BAM leader? What does that look like? Here's what the world's calling us to. It's the triangles on the left-hand side. You'll see it says success. 1 John 2, 15, 16, I think, is the ideal description of what the world is calling us to. Do not love the world or anything in the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. For everything in the world, the cravings of sinful man, possessions, the lust of his eyes, pleasure, and the boasting of what he has and does comes not from the Father, but from the world. Pride, pleasure, and possessions. It says for everything in the world. I think every sin we commit can be put in one of those three categories: pride, pleasure, possessions. Those three P's run throughout Scripture. Adam and Eve were in the garden. They held up the apple. They said, it tastes good. Possessions. It's beautiful. Pleasure. And it'll make me like God. Pride. Solomon did the same thing. Jesus, coming out of the wilderness, did the same thing. Pride, pleasure, and possessions. So how do we get rid of what the world is calling us to, which is success, and moving to what Jesus is calling us to, and that's surrender? That's the triangle on the right-hand side. And the answer is in that little green arrow called, it's called dying to self. Galatians 2:20, I have been crucified with Christ, and I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. The life I live in the body, I live by faith in the Son of God who loved me and gave himself for me. You see, if we die to ourselves, then pride, which is really service to self, will turn to service to others. Pleasure, which is really about me, turns to excellence for God. And possessions turns to stewardship of the assets that God's given me. But to do that, we have to die to Christ. And this, I think that is a problem. I have been crucified with Christ. I've not met a person yet that thought crucifixion was a good thing. But that's what God's calling us to. Here is my problem, and it's probably part of your problem. You see, I want to live in both worlds. There's a thing in the middle there you'll see called significance. You see, significance is living with one foot in the kingdom and one foot in the world. It makes me feel good because I get the best of both worlds. All right? But here's what Jesus says about significance. Revelation 3:5. I wish you were either cold, successful, or hot, surrendered. Oh no, you're lukewarm. You're significant. And I think if we want to really make a difference, folks, we have got to die to ourselves, which is really, really hard, and live surrendered. I would love to tell you that I live a surrendered life, but I don't. Let me go through this transition for me. I believe for me, this transition from success to significance to surrender followed my 30s, my 40s, and my 50s. I think in your 20s, you're searching, okay? And I think you're searching for the 3 M's: your master, your mate, and your mission. Your master, who are you going to serve? Your mission, what job are you going to do? And your mate, who are you going to marry? You spend your 20s figuring that out. And at 30 years of age, you say, I'm ready to get after it. And so you start your thing of your pursuit of success, all right? My 30s were a period of, I was pursuing success. At the end of that, I had a traumatic event in business, and I about went bankrupt. And God got my attention. I think he uses trials to move us from success to significance. So I moved from success to significance. For me, it was understanding the difference between ownership and stewardship. And I did that at 40 years of age in the early 90s. Unfortunately, I thought significance meant financial generosity. So essentially, I just put the hammer down on business. I made as much money as I could. We got in the leverage buyout deal, the private equity of today. We made a lot of money. We gave a lot of money away, and I was significant. The problem was I had just exchanged scorecards. I took the financial bottom line of business, net operating income, and I just kind of moved it over here to the scorecard of how much I was giving away. All right, but it was still about me. It was still what I was doing. I wasn't surrendered. And when I understood surrender, I didn't understand surrender until the end of my 40s. God brought another trial into my life, and that trial was 9/11 and the dot-com bubble. Our businesses went from black ink to red ink. Generosity ceased. Pete got mad at God. But what he was doing, he was using me. He was taking me through another trial to move me on. I think if I look at most of the young men or the 40 and 50-year-olds I see success in your 30s. I see significance in your 40s. and and I'm seeing people want to move to surrender in their 50s. And I think surrender is really, really important. Let me tell you, surrender is not waving the white flag. Surrender is not quitting. In 2001, I said, I talked myself, we were losing millions. And I said, I'm a bad business guy. And I said, God's using this trial to move me from business to ministry. I read Bob Buford's book, Halftime. A bunch of you've read that. I said, I need to be significant. So I had a couple of mentors, and I called these guys together. Well, I took them to lunch. And so I cooked up this marvelous plan to sell our business and get out of business and go into ministry. So I laid out this plan for them, and I said, guys, I'm going to sell my businesses. I'm going to go into ministry and really be significant. And they just sat there and looked at me stone-faced. They finally got themselves together in a few minutes, and one of them leaned across the table and said, if you think you're bad in business, you've not seen bad till you get in ministry. And in that, he said, your business is your ministry. And in 2 minutes, I'd been turned around. So for the last 25 years, we have been trying to do this. There have been a couple times I have been surrendered in my life. In the late 90s, we were in the LBO business. We had a little portfolio of companies. We'd also started a ministry, and we had a need for a great deal of money. And we tried to raise $3-4 million to get this ministry off the ground and do some things with it, and had no success doing that. My wife came to me and said, Pete, you know, we've got this business over here, and what you need to do is take and sell that business, and we'll just fund that ministry. Now, here was the problem. She picked the business that was easiest to run and made the most money. And so she and I had a tussle over the weekend, and she won. And on Monday morning, I called a couple of companies up that were pursuing us, and I said, I'm going to sell this business. Long story short, and a couple weeks later, we had offers in, and a couple weeks after that, we signed the documents to sell the business. And 2 weeks after that, this particular business happened to be in the medical field, and 90% of our revenues were from the government on Medicare, Medicaid, et cetera. And 2 weeks after that, Congress passed a 40% reduction in our revenues. The public company that ultimately bought us went bankrupt. So I didn't want to be surrendered, but folks, when God is taking you through a trial, I'm just encouraging you. Embrace that trial. James 1, when you encounter trials of various kinds, knowing that the testing of your faith develops perseverance, and let perseverance have its perfect result, that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. God's taking you through the trial. And I bet the majority of you in here today are facing a trial. Embrace the trial. The sooner you embrace it, the faster you will get to maturity and completeness. And that's really what he wants you to do. There was one other time, more recently, that I will give you that I was surrendered. And this was 7 years ago. I have a son that joined me in business at the age of 30, and he'd been with me about 15 years, and it was time for him to take over. Now, I always thought that I would just kind of bring him in, and I would fade into the sunset, and everything would just be fine. Unfortunately, probably fortunately, but for me at that time, unfortunately, I hired a succession coach, and he worked with us for a couple of months, and at the end of that time, he was going to give us a succession plan, and he goes, Pete, you need to leave. He said, your personality and your son's personality, well, let's put it this way. The apple didn't fall far from the tree, but it fell from the tree. And he said, you got to go away and let this young team get in there and go with it. And so I was there on Friday. I was gone on Monday. Now, let me tell you, folks, I'd preached stewardship for 25 years. And as I'm sitting at the lawyer's table signing the stock certificates to my son, I was as mad and upset and dejected as I had been in 40 years. you see our worthwhile, our self-worth, our identity is in what we do. It's in our platform. The biggest mistake I've made in life is I've made my platform my purpose. Your purpose is to honor God, period. Your platform is the thing He's given you to live that purpose out. That's what your BAM business is about. So that was another trial for me. So I wish I could tell you I lived a surrender life, but I'm really good at being significant. Let me put this all together. So if you take the personal transformation and the business transformation and put them, look at this side of your card if you've got that handy there. Let's kind of put this all together, and I'm going to wrap this up pretty quick. If you look at the middle of that card, you'll see a gold, you'll see 4 dark words there: principles, people, practices, and performance, okay? I really believe that principles define people, people determine practices, and practices drive performance, okay? So everything is driven by principles, and our 4 principles are the 4 principles found right here in the center: honor God, serve people, be excellent, and be a good steward. Those 4 principles drive everything we do. This is a graphic. This graphic hangs on the wall of every room in our business, and once a month we have a meeting, and particularly in the meeting hall, right up behind who's ever speaking, hangs this graphic, and we turn around and we talk about one of these 4 principles, okay? If you came into our business and went over to one of the lines, one of the seat lines, let's say, and asked somebody that'd been there maybe a year and say, how does Pete run this business? He would turn around and he'd say, well, we honor God, we serve people, we're going to be excellent, we're going to be good stewards. And we create economic, social, and spiritual capital. They know that. That's how we inculcate culture into our business. You see, those 4 principles drive your 4 people virtues. So if you're going to honor God, your people are going to be, the top one there, people of character. If they're going to serve people, they're going to be good connectors. If you're going to be excellent, you're going to be competent. And if you're going to be a steward, you're going to be committed. So you see, those 4 principles drive our 4 people values, which drive the culture in your business. We're constantly talking about character, commitment, competence, and connection. We give awards on that. Can you believe every year we have, in each one of our plants, the people get to vote on what that person is going to do, or what award they're going to win. We have murderers get character awards. It's the craziest thing you've ever seen. Those 4 principles drive our practices. We have 4 practices. If you're going to honor God, that is going to drive what we do in navigation. We call the word navigation, it's really leadership for us. But we believe there's not just the leadership, there are 3 other ships. There's lordship, there's managership, and there's stewardship. So we use the term navigation so you make sure you're working all 4 of those ships. If you're going to serve people, that will drive your culture. If you do excellence well, that will drive your strategy. And if you're going to be a good steward, that will drive your cash. And if you live by your principles and they drive your culture, they drive your systems or your practices, you will have great performance. You will create economic, social, and spiritual capital. There's a little QR code over here. If you snap on that and want to do and see how good your business stacks up in a BAM assessment, we got a little 40-question assessment that will rate you on how we do some of this, so you're certainly welcome to do that. Let me close with this thought. Folks, the world is crazy. The world's in trouble. The best platform we have to change the world is business, is a BAM business. And I believe that's true because we can give people the 3 things they need to flourish: a good job, good relationships, and Jesus. We can provide them with economic, social, and spiritual capital. But you can't do that unless you're a BAM leader. And if you're going to be a BAM leader, you have to answer these 3 questions. The first question is, am I pursuing success? Am I pursuing success? Success is holding on tightly to the things that you've achieved. Or am I pursuing significance? Significance isn't bad. It's holding those things that God's given you open-handedly so He can use them. But the real key, and if you really want to make a difference, is answering the last question. Am I surrendered? And that means taking everything you own, putting it on the table, being all in. It's the only way we can do it, and I don't think we have any other option if we want to change the world. Thank you. It's been great to be with you.
Thank you. We're not done with you yet, my brother. You stay here. Thank you, brother.
Okay, yeah.
All right, so we have a few minutes now to ask me anything. Maybe not anything about anything, but maybe anything about what he has just shared. Let's have a few minutes. We got microphones. Yeah, we do. Right here. If you'd like to come and engage Pete a little bit further and extract some more of that wealth, it would be great to come right here to the microphone. Otherwise, you could yell probably. He gave us 3 really strong suggestions at the end, so if you want to consider something along those lines or go back to the beginning, but now's your chance. And I'm going to move out of the way, and you guys run with it, starting over here on this side.
Yeah. Pete, I wanted to ask you, how difficult would it be for, let's say I'm in Tennessee, and let's say the state of Tennessee, we got legislators and business owners involved, and we wanted to replicate what you've done. Like we've got a 90-something%, we've got like a 97% recidivism rate, and you drove it to 7. Could we replicate that throughout prisons in Tennessee?
Yeah, so we have worked diligently to replicate what we're doing in prison and what we're doing in Kansas. And we have not, to be honest, we've not had a great success doing that. Here are the 3 things that you have to make this happen. You have to have a governor who's willing. You have to have a secretary of corrections who's willing. You really need a warden in the prison because he's going to be the guy that has to put up with me and my 6 or 8 truckloads of stuff coming into his prison every day and 6 or 8 truckloads of stuff going out, all right? And then you have to have a business person who says, I can do this. Now, trust me, if I can do it, you can do it, okay? It's not without a few headaches, but it's not that big of a deal. And if you have an idea, I would start with the governor and the secretary of corrections in your states, okay? And we have flown multiple governors into Kansas. We've secretary of corrections. We've had businessmen. We will host you and your governor and whoever, and we'll give them another try. We are not giving up, but I think 7% recidivism, it's amazing. It's just amazing.
So HBO documentary has just come out about the Alabama prison system. It's called The Alabama Solution. It's currently on HBO right now. The state of Alabama is home to the deadliest prison system in the United States.
Yes.
I encourage everyone to watch the film because we really need significant change in the prison system in the state of Alabama. Let me ask you this question. What is the most significant lesson you have learned from a prisoner as you've been involved in the prison system?
Yes. I'm going to go back to social capital. Here's the way we treat economic, social, and spiritual capital. Let's follow the example of the Good Samaritan. What did you see in that parable? You had the priest and the Levite walking down the road, and there was a guy laying, the traveler, beat up and left for dead beside the road, and it said the priest and the Levite walked around him. It literally says that. They were thinking, if that guy just get Jesus, everything would be fine. It doesn't work that way, folks. You have to have economic, social, and spiritual capital. You can have all the friends in the world, you can know Jesus, but if you don't have food to eat, you are poor. So the first thing you should do is give people a good job. Not a job, a good job. Pay them well. The second thing you do is love them like you love yourself. Amazing things will happen. And when you love them like you love yourself and you give them a good job, then what happens is 1 Peter 3:15 kicks in. Be prepared to give a reason for the hope that is in you with gentleness and respect. Everybody will have a time in life when they're going to come and struggle with you. 2 years ago, within 1 week's time, I had a man that worked with me for 25 years and one that worked with me for 27 years, who I had talked to for 25 years and 27 years about Jesus. Both of them called me and said, I need to talk to you immediately. And their story was this. I was driving down the road and the Spirit overcame me and I pulled off to the road and said, Lord, I'm yours. Guys, this is a long game. And you got to love people for a long time. Great. Great, thank you.
Seminary operating in the state prison system who can be talked about. We have time for one more question right over here.
So you talked about hardship this season in your life, and you said embrace. I forget the word you used, but trial or trouble. What does that look like? Like, what do you mean? Like, how do you practically embrace that?
How do I get through those trials?
Yeah. Because you leaned out and you were telling us, like, if you're going through that, and I bet a lot of you are.
Yes.
You said your encouragement was to embrace that time, that trouble.
Yes.
What does that look like practically? Is the question.
I think there's a couple things. There are two things that we really need in life. One is we need to really have a relationship with God, and the only way you're going to have a relationship with Him is to spend time with Him every day. The second thing is you need accountability. You got to have a running buddy, okay? I will tell you, when I was 38 years old, we had the chance to take over a failing bank, okay? And we took this over. I was cleaning it up. I was suing people. I was repossessing assets like crazy. And one of my customers countersued me. And when I took the lawsuit to my attorney, this was one of the trials that God took me through. And when I took the lawsuit to his attorney, he said, the prior owner violated a bunch of lending laws. You bought the stock. You inherited all his bad stuff, and you will go bankrupt. You might as well say, stop. I said, no, justice will prevail. God will look after me, blah, blah, blah. Let's start depositions. So I was spending $8,000 a day. We started on a Monday. By Tuesday afternoon, I knew my goose was cooked. Wednesday went around, Thursday went around. I was pouring through God's Word. I'm telling you, God's Word is so important. Friday morning comes, and I'm in God's Word. I'm in Proverbs 6. And the Ochs translation of that first few verses says this: if you've gotten yourself in a jam, go humble yourself and beg to get out of the jam.
What was that other thing?
So Friday morning, deposition started, and all day Friday, all I could hear in my mind was go humble yourself and beg to get out of the jam. I went over to the guy that was suing me, and I said, could we talk about this lawsuit? His attorney was standing there, and he said, yeah, you guys want to talk about it? That's great. So I met the guy at 2 o'clock in the afternoon in his office, Sunday afternoon. Walked in, sat down. He came in a little bit. Now you have to understand, desperate people do desperate things. I get up out of my chair, I walk over, I get down on my knees in front of the guy's desk. And I said, Lynn, I'm a Christian. I was reading in my quiet time on Friday morning that if you've gotten yourself in a jam, go humble yourself and beg to get out of the jam. I'm humbling myself. I'm begging you. Let me out of this lawsuit. It will bankrupt me. As I finished, he began to weep. He said, Pete, I became a Christian 30 days ago, and I didn't know what to do. But I know the lawsuit's not right. 5 minutes later, the lawsuit was settled. So, folks, I'm telling you, you can't do it without being in God's Word. and you need somebody to hold you accountable to it. It's really a powerful thing. You good? Thank you.
Thank you, Pete.
You bet.